quick question on peak CPI. If central banks actually coordinate money printing across the board and flood the system with money supply, can this stem a big drop on those CPI charts?
No, listen, the theory, the economist will tell you if they do all this injection of liquidity, if they do the injection of liquidity, they inject liquidity, and this could be inflationary, right? And if this could be inflationary, then inflation would go up and CPI would go up, right? This is the rationale that many economists think. This is why the Germans are saying we don't want to do QE because it will be inflationary. But the problem is if they do QE, if the ECB does QE, meaning they buy bonds and they no longer mop the liquidity, they no longer sterilize the purchases of the bonds, then basically that could be inflationary. But my point is that it will not be inflationary in the regular sense of the word, meaning that it will not be inflationary where stocks where the price of stuff goes up. It will be inflationary that will create more money in the system, but it won't be inflationary, meaning that inflation is not necessarily going to go up. That's one reason. The other reason, it's an interesting question. The very reason that is going to drive the central banks to come in and to inject liquidity, that very reason could be a very bad reason. A very bad reason could be something very bad happening. Liquidity could be happening in growth, and that reason is usually accompanied by weak inflation or weak growth. Okay. Now, many of you will disagree and will say, Ashraf, you're talking, who the hell are you kidding? You're saying inflation is weak? This is the statistical inflation that the central banks do to lie at the people. That's fine, but I don't need to play that game. I don't need to argue with you. I don't need to be convinced that inflation in the street is high and gasoline is up and this and the central banks are lying to us. I don't care, because you know what? I'll tell you what. When I trade day to day and when I look at the market, I don't look at the price. I don't look at what you pay for oranges or what I pay for gas. I look at what the central bank tells me what the number is, meaning and what the statistical agency gives me for that CPI, and that's what the market is going to react for the next hour or 5 days or 5 hours or 3 weeks. Because let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Because if you thought that the Bank of England was on crack by saying that inflation is going to peak at 5%, while everything else is up in London, and then inflation did peak at 5.2 and it went down, and if you try to play against the Bank of England, then you would have lost money. Because the Bank of England finally, they've been saying when inflation went to 4%, they've been saying inflation is going to peak, and then it went, because the target in the Bank of England inflation is at 2%, and it went to 3, and they said it's going to peak soon, and then finally Mervyn King said it's going to peak at 5 to 5.4%. And it peaked at 5.2, and he was right. There's many reasons why. Now, whether you agree with him that there is inflation or not, and you don't like what Mervyn King is doing by injecting liquidity, that's fine. But I'm not here to say they should do this, they should do that. I'm not here. That's another conversation for another day when we have coffee and everything, and I can, and I can grow long hair and I can look like the philosopher and say what's good, what's bad. That's not the time. The time now is to play that and to act to it, react to it.